Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Gentleman and we are here to do one thing and one thing only, and that is discuss Toki no Keishoucha, Phantasy Star III translated Successors of Time, or as it is known in the West, Phantasy Star III, Generations of Doom. Yuji Naka and his team, who had forged the first two outings, answered the call to create a sequel to their hit platformer Sonic the Hedgehog. As a result, the third entry in Sega's RPG franchise had to be developed by what was essentially a B-team. While many would go on to do great things, they were at the time less experienced. Phantasy Star III is so contentious that I have been asked if I will praise the game, or when it is that I will be tearing it to pieces. Phantasy Star III's creators attempted to forge an ambitious work. They show clear effort in their attempt to add to the early RPG mythos new ideas and variations on sci-fi, fantasy, and RPG concepts. The goal is to analyze the execution as fairly as possible, whether it is truly amazing or truly awful. The tenor and central elements of Phantasy Star III are introduced in its opening. The title card is fitting for both sci-fi and fantasy, while accompanied by music reflecting those genres. But the style progressively feels more medieval, as if one genre is becoming more dominant over the other. The tone contains a deep sense of melancholy, describing a regretful remembrance of the pain and suffering of generations past, establishing the foundation of the story. The world lore initially appears archetypal. Orakio, the legendary hero and the protagonist's ancestor, with his army of androids fought the monsters created by Laia, the Dark Lord of this history. However, the grungy, two-tone colors lacking in clear facial detail give the imagery a vague sensibility rather than a heroic sentiment, conveying something is uneven about these chronicles. We will see how these concepts shape the narrative. Whereas most RPGs develop a love story, Phantasy Star III begins with a prince, Riz or Kine, on the eve of his marriage. Marina's light blue hair, mysterious complexion, the gossips surrounding her power, and amnesia give her an air of mystery and allure, making her one of the best early examples of the amnesiac trope, and granting her an immediate gravitas as a character. Upon her sudden kidnapping at the wedding, you can truly feel Kine's burning passion. His angry rhetoric and call for the army convey his intensity. It establishes a strong personality and setup for our protagonist. His quest is contextualized as a romantic journey to reclaim his dream woman, which is a rather non-standard premise for a RPG. His menu image embodies a man on a mission. Kine is willing to wage a war for Marina, prepare to risk lives and predisposed to kill any lions in his path. A way of thinking we should keep in mind. Now, a certain NPC is supposed to mention Kine's spurned previous marriage arrangement. Such an important piece of information stuffed in a house is bad enough, but it's not here at all. Here we must discuss the translation. One reason I believe the game is so maligned is the terrible localization, which often renders the story nonsensical. NPC dialogue lacks sophistication, is not always easily understood, certain narrative and characterization moments are muddled, and the significance of what is being said can easily be lost. It even spoils the end of the game in the first hour. Phantasy Star II did not have a perfect localization, but this makes the heart of the events partially undecipherable. As some of you surely have noticed, I have been using the retranslation. So while the original localization receives a failing grade, I at least want to give the story as intended a fair look. Going forward, I will be using the original names for reasons stated. I do apologize for any confusion. After being placed in jail to calm down by your father, a mysterious, though somewhat plain-looking woman named Lena frees you, and thus you begin your quest. Phantasy Star III's narrative is based primarily on the story of the world, as opposed to focusing on its plot and characters. The last game used NPCs to depict the consequences of a false utopia. The ones here display how Orakio and Laia's ancient war inspired modern worldviews long after their deaths. Orakio is spoken of as if he were an apothecized god. Orakio's law is front and center, Meanwhile, there is paranoia of Alliance spies lurking about. Conspiracies are seen in every corner, and there is fear of the Alliance's strange and odd powers. Many do not know if the lions are even alive. The monster population, however, does mean that lions do exist and are at work within the world. And one could perhaps believe, as in many RPGs, that the Dark Lord has been revived. But the obsessive, fanatical way they talk sow in us an awareness that a peculiarity lies at the heart of this world. In any other game, the tropes of a Dark Lord and monsters would warrant justified suspicion. But the level of anxiety and furor we see give us a sense of unease. The NPCs and world map also build the mysteries of world history. Civilization sailed between the stars. Separate worlds are said to exist, and they even touch on familiar moments. The history and the means of progression that use it are painted as legends and fairy tales. Locations such as the elaborate passages and the airplane runways are referred to as ruins, a word we usually associate with archaeological sites. The mysterious lion Greco-Roman style temples are closer to our conception of that idea. They perhaps tempt us to believe the Arachio and Laia war was between a futuristic, advanced people against an anti-technological society. But overall, our observations leave us with the feeling that not all is as it seems. The RPG trope of ancient high technology, rather than concentrated within one area, plays a universal role writ large across the world's history. Narratively, all we have seen and heard reveals the aspect Phantasy Star III is most excellent at, creating build-up and anticipation. The game allows you to see various details, plants ideas in your head, sets them up for an eventual, satisfying payoff. However, the quality of the prose can be substandard. While there is a decent amount of story, there is little in the way of dramatic storytelling. The text lacks well-crafted dialogue, where lines can be written to have weight, personality, emotion, and even contain subtext. The lore can be told quite plainly and hints can boil down to, hey, the thing is over there. Rather than feeling like real people, NPCs feel as if they are spouting information the programmer wanted you to know. It can often feel like an early 8-bit title, from a time when people were expecting more of 16-bit games, and in a time where certain late-era 8-bit titles were superior in polish. The towns can also be quite generic with little personality. The intentions of the dialogue can simply be unclear. Even in retranslation, I am unsure if all of this is the retranslators or the original dialogue at fault. Kine, using the information he learns, must search the world. He requires his family's heirloom jewel to reactivate the tunnels, but it was stolen. His only lead requires he use a boat, but the Seacraft's owner desires some eye candy, and the tunnel ruins lead to a wintry world, where we find another tunnel to a desert environment where cyborgs reside. The world types are an attempt to homage the classic environments of previous games. The biggest issue both here and for the entire game is the sparseness. While there is far more dialogue than the last game, there are huge gaps in the story. 4 issues are at hand. 1. Everything we do requires long journeys with an utterly slow walk speed, slower than even the last game, and within a much larger world. 2. Long amounts of time between narrative events, created and exacerbated by the slow walk. 3. Very little talking or interaction or anything in depth. And 4. Much of what we do comes off as pointless fetch quests with uninteresting objectives. Fetch quests can be good, but they are at their worst when you can't appreciate the story reason you are doing them. These 4 issues work in tandem, feeling like a long, slow walk everywhere completing wearisome objectives, to the point that it's very easy to zone out. Often, it becomes easy to forget why we are doing this and feels as if we have lost sight of our overall goal. And using quests to travel from place to place is also fine, but you still need to remind the player why, to remind them of the context as to why you are doing all of this. The journey to find Marina serves more as a context, often feeling as if this was the inciting incident that leads us to discover the true story, the truth behind history. The story's approach is novel, deceiving us into what Kind's story is truly about. It can feel investigatory at times, and it works due to the fascinating world. But again, you still need to remind people of the framework of searching for Marina. The deceptive story only works, after all, if you are deceiving the player while slowly unraveling what you truly wish to show them. What is sorely missing is Kind's voice to interact and question all that he is seeing, one that reacts to that which is around him. While the narrative is rooted more in the world, Kind, while not being a silent protagonist, is often treated like one. A marked improvement is that the party members joined for personal reasons. Miu, this title's feline reference, has spent her life maligned due to being mistaken for a lion, but is ready to face life and joins you on your mission. Siren, or Ren, joins as Kind is the first descendant of Arakio he has seen in a long time. We do not receive much beyond this, and their motivations are plainly stated, while not being as dramatized as one would like. Unfortunate, as they have fantastic designs that convey a lot of personality. The combat once again uses the automated battle system. Manual entry is possible, though it can be an annoyingly long process. The improved weapon system is quite nice. Two-handed weapons strike powerfully, excellent for large enemies. Dual wielding allows you to attack two different enemies or a single enemy twice. Row mechanics appear in this franchise for the first time, necessitating clearing the front row first, or using ranged attacks to hit the back row. Needles are more expensive melee weapons which can hit the back row. Guns may also do so, with Vulcan types hitting everyone in a row. Slicers target rows as well and can be dual-wielded. Specific stat bonuses from weapons to speed and defense are now much more prevalent. The economy is consistently strong, challenging your prioritization of what you want and when with your limited funds. A central aspect is how the races are contextualized. Orakians are physically powerful, cyborgs are balanced, and the lions are mages. Techs are balanced in terms of how many enemies they can hit, which is quite unique. In the tech distribution shop, you can choose a family of techs to adjust skills at the cost of others. The specialization is thus between power and hitting multiple enemies. Leveling up grants you additional charges. You may prioritize a balanced approach or go more all out. Unfortunate is that you do not learn any new techs beyond what you begin with, excluding the excitement of learning new ones. Honestly, fully committing to one is preferred to do optimal damage and for healing. Due to so few bosses, Foi is less useful unless you know a boss is coming up. Due to being a heavy group game, few encounters force you to switch things up beyond a single anti-group setup per chapter. Thus, the pros and cons are weakened. Many people enjoy giving two people Sue, though a combination of Zan and later on Gra can work as well. Elements exist, but the weakness system is generally irrelevant. There is some risk and reward, such as not raising ante will require antidotes, and choosing group healing may require you to hold on to some dimates and trimates. This system is far from perfect. It is somewhat boring in execution, as the balancing system leaves you with so few options in battle. Overall, it's flawed, but I would like to see a refined version of this model in a modern game. In terms of challenge, the enemies usually don't do high damage, but tend to shave off your HP little by little, especially effective as you figure out the maze-like nature of the dungeons. Most punishment comes from not handling groups appropriately. Outside of early grinding, you won't need to do much more except for money as long as you understand the systems. Certain tough moments do arise, but the game is ultimately fair. Visually, I do miss seeing behind characters as they fought, and unlike the lightning-fast nature of the last game, the pace is much easier to follow now. However, there is a lack of strong sound effects for many attacks and an overall lack of flair. Things in many games we take for granted, but do serve a practical purpose, as they generally draw our eyes, helping us pay attention to who is taking damage. The texture, designs, and sci-fi implications of the last game's enemies were incredible, some of my favorites of all time, but this is quite the downgrade. Some have good concepts, such as certain interesting combinations, or the much larger enemies, such as the towering giants and huge stone faces that take up the screen, but so many are flat, uninspired, boring, weird in a bad way, or just plain bad. The animations, a series hallmark, are very weak, stiff, and overall unenjoyable. Come on, flap those ears for me. Show me your dance moves. Oh yeah, move those pecs. Alright, do your... What are you doing? The game is also filled to the brim with recolors, more so than most RPGs. The backgrounds return from the first game, but they're somewhat flat and the good ones lose their novelty. The original Japanese version had parallax scrolling, which they attempted to simulate to mixed results. Still, it is preferable for them to be there than not be there at all. What is ambitious is the use of conditional music. Battles open with a preparatory theme, then transitions to a tense theme if the battles are balanced, a victorious theme if you are winning, or a despairing song if you are losing. The overworld theme describes the bleakness of a long, weary journey, but there are technically 5 themes. The song gaining an additional instrument as you gain party members. The song's mood changing, as if the song seems to say that you are now sharing your burden with others. There is even a theme that plays if Kain is dead or only one party member is alive. Altogether, it adds a sense of narrative experience and progression, both in battle and as you walk around thanks to the music. Many location themes are also as well composed as anything else in the series, and I always felt the feeling these songs were attempting to convey. Despite that, Phantasy Star III does not have a great sound font, one which is not always very good at expressing the ideas or even just sounding pleasant. Often the music can be extremely grating on the ears. The sudden changes in battle music can also be quite jarring. Still, however, the concept is both immensely original and pioneering. Visually, the game is underwhelming. Many graphics, including grass and water, are simply ugly. The dusky colors are meant to convey the medieval atmosphere, but the graphics and coloring come off as flat. From city to city, it's the same house designs, interiors, and colors. The true issue is perhaps repetition, as you see so much of the same things over and over and over again. The techno dungeons and the threateningly colored caves do look good, at least at first, as they eventually see overwhelming overuse. Every house in the game has an upstairs, an idea both ambitious and realistic, but they're empty 3/4 of the time, and with the possibility of a worthwhile NPC being within one, it means that you will be visiting each one. Phantasy Star III receives credit for ambition, but no credit for wasting my time. In the end, it's quite an ugly game and the visuals become very, very, very old. To hone in on the plot's most significant moments, the aforementioned heirloom was stolen by the mysterious Lyle, one of the few characters allowed to be more developed, merely handing you the jewel he stole with a sly attitude and saying he wished to travel with you. He is meant to be a mysterious figure with hidden motivations. However, even in retranslation, it is difficult to grasp the nuances, including the writer's intentions to wrap the characters within a certain atmosphere. By repairing weather control, a reference to the previous game, you undo the winter, allowing Lal to invite you on a journey towards his homeland. But before we arrive, we first come upon Ago, an Iraqian settlement not far from a lion one. The paranoia of the enemy runs deep, but the most telling statement is this: the worst part is how the lions look like us. Even those who have seen lions, despite what their eyes portray, maintain their belief that they are inherently evil rather than what reality shows them. Entering a lion city for the first time, we find it empty. Perhaps everyone is hiding. From you, that is. Upon finally meeting lions, we see their point of view. To them, Laia was not a Dark Lord, but the hypothesized goddess of love. To them, Arachio was the Dark Lord who murdered her. What becomes clear is that both the Iraqians and lions are victims of their own traditions. Both sides have been raised in the same way, with an ancient war and passed down traditions inspiring exaggerated views and irrational hatred of one another. A young child says he hopes to grow up, gain power, and kill Iraqians. Appalling as it is, you realize it is a sad example of how this world works. Phantasy Star III executes a quality subversion of fantasy tropes, using them to tell a story of two blinded civilizations. Kain, who was so prepared to slay lions, we find has a journey where subtly his prejudices are challenged. The game is admirable for showing both sides in the wrong, as this could have happened to any society at any time, with no one being an exception. Also, by limiting your information to what Kai knows and learning from NPCs little by little with him, we are partakers in his initial bias and his slow uncovering of the truth via gameplay exploration. You must face Lyle in a one-on-one fight that's stupidly hard for no reason. Apparently he is testing you, and Lena shows up once more. Again, I wish the pros did a better job conveying their suspect nature. We do finally receive the truth about Lyle in town. Him being a tech user was good foreshadowing via gameplay. As it turns out, he is a lion and the Prince of Chusaron. Again, I wish we could receive Kain's commentary here. The only way to reach the lion capital apparently is to move the moon to reveal a land bridge. First off, wouldn't it just be easier to find a boat? Secondly, this initiates the mother of all backtracking. Combined with all that's been said, the slow track to and back is so mundane that I completely zoned out. Anyway, the lore states that the two moons had drifted apart, which can only be undone by the moon tear and moonstone. The relics throughout the narrative contain fantasy undertones, and yet have science fiction functionality. That equilibrium between genres is what makes Phantasy Star's methodology so unique. After crossing the land bridge, Seal's NPCs and music make the atmosphere quite palpable. The fanaticized hatred of the city burns against you. Every NPC is venomous towards your intentions. But by now, you have attained understanding of the origin of this world's beliefs. The central twist is that the Lions did indeed take Marina. However, it was due to her being their princess. This means Lyle, who is Marina's cousin, has been guiding your steps all along. It also means the woman Kain loved was a lion the whole time. Kain's final boss is Seal's King, a very different kind of final battle, the father of the woman you have pursued. Phantasy Star III is exceptional at playing with your assumptions, both in story and lore. The lions create monsters, therefore, they must be the bad guys. Your ancestors created cyborgs who seem peaceful enough, and Kain descends from Arachio, the legendary hero. Of course you are good guys and they are the bad guys, which turned out to not be true at all. That said, I must reiterate the actual prose, even in retranslation, feels very early video game. Thus, lacking the drama and force the game is begging for. The point and motivations of characters and sometimes even the most basic text can be lost on the player. As a result, I blame no one for playing the game and finding so much of what I said was new to them. One of the most groundbreaking features in 1994 RPGs was that Phantasy Star III introduced the concept of marriage to video games. We are presented with a choice between Marina, the mysterious lion princess, or Lena, the princess who I describe as lost in translation. What about Miss Catgirl Cyborg over here? Miu was fighting for the glory of the kingdom the entire time, so where is the cyborg waifu option? Alright. Not only did Phantasy Star have marriage, but it understood what it could do in a video game, having narrative and gameplay consequences. Choosing Marina leads to a beautiful exchange of well-crafted dialogue, in which both parties choose to adhere to a sacrifice. Kain becomes the king of Seal and its lions, and becomes the father of Ayn. Those we once fought as our enemy are now our people, offering a fascinating twist and shift in role identity. A legion of robots wearing Arachio's colors appear. Kain tasks Ayn with finding the legendary satellite. A fabled utopia. The setup strongly creates mystery. Is Kain's homeland initiating a new war? Is another responsible? And how did they field a robot army that large? The story element of Satellite mixes science fiction as the player knows what a satellite is, along with the fantasy tropes of prophecy, with both believers and skeptics. It also plays into the idea of how this world's sci-fi is often remembered through a medieval lens. The satisfying consequences of your choice include how Iraqian and Lion settlements are at peace, as it affected world politics. With Lena, a key flaw in localization was the fact that the princess from Cetera, that kinda knowingly spurned turning out to be her, was totally omitted, meaning that she chose to help you selflessly. Why was this left out? Without it, marrying Lena loses any compelling force. If you choose her, Kyne honors her devotion and charity. Lena expresses that this was always her dream, bringing up imagery of a princess wanting her promised prince. The dialogue says Kyne found love within his journey. I do wonder if any player truly felt that way. Unlike, say, Dragon Quest V, which uses dialogue and gameplay to contextualize your journey to make you feel that. Whereas the dialogue here does not, and Lena in combat did not exactly stand out as a party member you could appreciate and grow fond of. We turn to the story of their son, Lion. Cetera, Lena's kingdom, is assaulted by monsters. The premise also attempts to be one of mystery. The Lions must have a commander, but it could not possibly be Seal, could it? Cetera features wrecked visuals and encounters to convey its destruction with decent impact. The invading lions and monsters came from the south, going by the name Loon's Army. But Laia's right-hand man was named Loon, and 1,000 years ago he was banished by Arachio, establishing the intrigue. However, Lion's route is overall less interesting. The marriage lacks the twist of joining two cultures and that powerful sense of sacrifice. You are still playing as an Iraqian from Rick, the player point of view is the same, and the enemy are lions once more. The race gameplay synergy is advanced by the second generation. Ayn, being half lion, gains healing and time tax while also having very good strength. Niall, being pure Iraqian, is a physical powerhouse. As with the last game, overworld enemies are contextualized in terms of narrative. Ayn faces robots and no monsters, reflecting the mystery of these unknown assailants. Certain designs such as the Robo-Man and Fatale lines have a unique man-machine sensibility, but some are quite rough. What's your gimmick? To tell me how to get off the I-95? Oh, please tell me, what is the point of your design? But on average, they are superior to this game's monster designs. Lion, meanwhile, faces monsters once more as befitting of Loon's army, though a lack of change makes this less interesting, and it is far less captivating than the sudden robot outpouring. The choice to use a pair of cyborgs was a brilliant decision, as it grants you consistently recognizable allies to use over multiple generations. The issue with Ayn and Niall, however, is their lack of ability to be captivating. Ayn, just when touching shore, must backtrack, despite the fact we've barely investigated the robots or satellites' location. Though perhaps visiting two Iraqian cities and understanding they are not at fault counts. Returning to Seal, it has been empty due to the robot invasion. Though outside of encounters, nothing visually or musically reflects a sorrowful homecoming for Ayn. Upon learning of his kin's location, he must use the tunnel to access the desert. The issue here is that Ayn's travels consists of revisiting areas from Kyne's journey. The locations are uninspiring to begin with, so a second visit makes for a slow, grueling travel. It is a reverse journey of your father's, which is poetic in theory, but it doesn't make up for the pain. Ayn learns from the cyborgs and his people he finds in hiding that he requires the twins Ruby and the Power Topaz, the former being in the hands of Lyle's kidnapped daughter. Upon finally discovering new areas, each use the same aesthetics and stylings for boring results. Something which could be said for the rest of the game going forward. The towns can lack intriguing NPCs and even narratively noteworthy ones to pace and separate all the walking. Combined with the backtracking, the result is that there are long stretches where nothing happens. and anything that is learned is sparse and thin. Exacerbating this is the combat for both characters. The battles demand few strategic differences from the first part. While somewhat challenging initially, you eventually become quite overpowered. As a result, the experience became so tedious I completely zoned out, to the point any narrative and mystery offered weakened due to me forgetting what I was doing. Next town, we learn two things. A. That there are technological Iraqians who can lead one to satellite, but this makes them prime suspects for the robot invasion. And B. The princess is in another castle, so we must backtrack again. After searching the robot-infested castle, we rescue Lyle's daughter, Lan, who has the twins Ruby, and we must backtrack yet again to make use of it to take a new route to Kyne's homeland. And it has also been overrun by the robots, meaning they are not responsible. Within, you discover Lynn, Lena's daughter, who promptly attacks you. Upon defeat, she surrenders the power Topaz, but decides to join you out of suspicion. Lynn is a physical powerhouse in combat, great with any weapon, though Lan is one of the best party members, boasting her use of slicers as well as melee and healing techs. Story-wise, their personalities are basic tropes, and their stories are ultimately basic. Neither quite have the compelling appearance Marina had, and their relationship to Ayn is practically non-existent. At this point, you kind of either have to guess what to do, or backtrack, or just look it up. At the Cape of the Dragon Spine, the dragon which kidnapped Marina in the first part reappears, turning out to be Lyle. The revelation, his fear of your father, his close friend discovering what he did, makes this one of the few true emotionally impactful moments, even if it could be fleshed out more. The engineer Iraqians turn out to not be responsible, as the robots have taken their castle as well. Momentarily turning back to Line's path, he treks through a southern cave to discover a new world containing Grand Directa, an Iraqian kingdom also under assault, where they do confirm it is the Loon, the ancient Laya's right-hand man. They manage to kidnap Loon's sister, Louise, though the king regrets it due to Knight's honor. Why though? Isn't she a POW? What law or honorable sentiment does that break? The one who caught her brags, stating she was merely wandering around, though it is never explained why. Was it implied that she wished to help our side from the very beginning? Shouldn't she have been interrogated so that we may find out? And how do they even know this was Loon's sister? And moreover, why are we freeing her? Nevertheless, she believes you should stop her brother. Line discovers a lion camp rebelling against Loon. Their leader, Dan, chooses to execute you. But Loon actually exonerates you in the process of telling Dan to stand down. Dan decides to join you. For what reason? He doesn't know us. Lion's party isn't exactly renowned. And why would a rebel leader abandon his group to join us? Lion gains the Aqua Ren parts, though that only makes me ask why he didn't recognize we had cyborgs proving we were not lions. Regardless, Dan is a great party member, strangely having a lot of physical force for a lion, capable of dual-wielding staves. Surprisingly, Grand Directa contains dialogue changes, with a king glad you freed Louise, the people despairing for Loon's invasion, and the boaster admitting he did not kidnap the young lady. That extra dialogue just adds that little more character and identity to the world. Moreover, this show's line's journey is much denser. A lot more goes on, and there is less empty space due to less backtracking, allowing the story to more evenly build, even if it is a lot less intriguing than Ain's. That said, Loon's soldiers are combing the desert for Elias' treasure, so we must engage in a long backtrack. In a surprising moment, the Aqua Parts transforms Ren into Aqua Ren. But how exactly is everyone riding him? The next moment is one of the game's most profound. You surface in a hidden world, the strange shape of the land, the music based on the opening theme, and in a temple, wise men tell us of their sleeping beauty, Laya's younger sister, who has been granted her elder's name. was placed in cryogenic sleep, echoing LUTs from the last game. The overall effect is a profound fantasy moment with a sense of mystique. The scene is also one that is completely unexpected, using fantasy storytelling and sci-fi technology to give us something truly special. Lion's party enters Frigidia. As Phantasy Star games tend to culminate within a frozen region, Mist Oak's inhabitants speak of Lia's legacy, and that you will be tested within the Castle of Silence. The final room holds a pendant containing a recording of Lia, stating both she and Arakio discovered an unholy power that manipulated the war, and both left to confront this evil. This is a worthy payoff, as an astute player would realize them simultaneously killing each other was a suspect story after the first chapter's inconsistencies. Lia's pendant unlocks a kind of fast travel, using the temples we have seen to instantaneously travel to its pair. It is extremely welcome at this point. Utilizing the pendant, we discover the city of Pilota. Both routes have converged on a city with a shuttle. For Ein, due to you owning the ruby and topaz, you were granted the spaceship. The discovery of the world's true nature was considered a shocking twist. The game builds this up well, utilizing the alternate world's fantasy concept, each peculiarly shaped the same way, and the technological tunnels, all of which you explored in gameplay, which all finally come together in a way that makes sense within the narrative. This is also a rare moment where the characters are allowed to react, heightening the moment. The satellite Azura turns out to be one of the moon's kind summoned back in the first part. As with the satellite prophecy, Azura's aesthetics perfectly mix both fantasy and sci-fi. In Phantasy Star II, the story began mostly science fiction and rebalanced itself. In Phantasy Star III, it began mostly medieval and then rebalanced itself. Both games function as mirror images of each other. Despite issues, Ein's route delivers an incredible payoff with grand originality, as the robot legions originated from satellite. All that work and effort, only to discover the supposed utopia was where the existential threat originated from to begin with. Siren boasts an incredible design. Similar to the philosophy of the T-800, it takes the familiar, but details it heavily within cold metal. This game using a bit more of an anime-style flavor, but both ultimately having frightening results. Siren, unfortunately, is nothing more than a very easy pushover. On Lion's route, you are simply handed the shuttle for no reason. On top of that, the moment is far less dramatic due to less build-up around the satellite's existence. The spaceship flies to Violetta, the opposite moon of Azura. Lune refuses to listen and we receive our final boss fight. The battle is somewhat more challenging than the one with Siren, as it does require more healing and even buffing. Lion's finale is comparatively underwhelming, as you mostly know what to expect. Without any original moments and the prose not enhancing the drama well enough, it lacks power. Showing him Lia's pendant causes Lune to back down, and granting him understanding that Lia's sister was the true treasure. Lune says Luis, you know, that girl we freed earlier, has been thinking about you and he offers her in marriage, but we'll speak on that in a moment. The second generation overall does have its moments, especially the robot invasion and awakening Lia's sister. However, the amount of overall world building and story is lower than the first part, which could already feel sparse at times. Also, neither main character nor any going forward have any real characterization. The developers implemented marriage and separate routes to give Phantasy Star III a unique identity. However, due to space limitations and perhaps rushed development, the overall density of the second and upcoming third generations was far more lacking. Ein's marriage choices leave something to be desired. Unlike Marina, neither Lin or Lan have that it factor, strong thematic undercurrent, and their personalities are only basic tropes. With Lin, Ein fulfills her father's promise, not the most compelling romance. All it does is double down on remaining with the Lions, or at least that was what I saw as the allure. Shin, their son, has 3/4 lion blood, granting him healing, melee, and time techs. But he has the lowest strength of 3rd generation characters. His opening is perhaps the most compelling. Ein and Lin fought an endless war against the robots, but suddenly, a laser cannon blasts Azura's reactor. Shin's homeland and parents are gone, though it is unfortunate that we do not receive a reaction from him. Miu does, however, sad for her loss, and perhaps in knowing they must return to where the story began in Rick. The staggering, original setup of a moon being destroyed, and the resulting mystery make for an intriguing opening. Below, we find Cetera wiped out by monsters, Lan resisting an invasion by Loon, Siren's whereabouts are unknown, and Arakio's twin brother Rulakar has resurfaced, some considering him to be their new god. The combined effect is a real sense of an apocalyptic endgame, of many unknown factors giving way to chaos. The encounters intensify the disorder. Both robots and monsters assault you. Both slaughter Arakian and Lion alike. The mystery, sense of impending doom, and grandiose scale are sharpened due to gameplay and NPCs. While this is present in all 3rd-gen roots, it is especially so on Shin's, due to his severe framework. Unfortunate are the many reused sprites and recolors which broke some of that immersion. Choosing Lin, Ein wishes to fulfill the promise his father could not. She says she supposes she has no complaints. What is that meant to imply? Is she shy about her feelings and is speaking in an awkward fashion? Or is she simply like, I guess? It's hard to tell. Ein and Lin defended Rick from invasions by Loon and had a son, Noin. A messenger from Azura states Siren has renewed his war and in his mania, redirected the ship towards a sun. Ein tasks Noin with finding the ship's pilots. Of all the 3rd-gen routes, this one manages to incorporate Loon and Siren the best, neither feeling like an afterthought. By not introducing an apocalyptic tone, it gives the chaos in Noin's quest more of a gradual escalation, unique among the 3rd generation. Being 3/4 Arakian, physically the strongest of the 3rd generation, but he only has time techs. An NPC states the ship's pilots are south of Cetera. Why are there legends about that if people did not know there was a ship? Did you read the script? Noin's party eventually learns the ship cannot course correct due to an unknown force. Shin and Noin's paths become similar at this point. We are told we need Laia's treasure to find the town with the ship's pilots. Wait, how do people know about Laia's treasure? Did you read the script too? We then cover much from Lion's route. The Aqua Ren parts are in a cave once used by the anti-Loon rebels, but I suppose they simply left their stuff there. This felt lazy, as the cave should have had its own original narrative conceit, rather than being an empty version of Lion's route. Awakening Laia's sister is profound as always, though has a different effect in the 3rd generation. Introducing Laia and the truth that Arakio and Laia left together to confront the true evil worked for that story and gave the Laia marriage option. For Ein's children, saving the revelation for the 3rd generation complements the deluge of upcoming reveals, as it already felt like an endgame story point, and as a result it actually fits in very well here, perhaps more so than the 2nd generation. Afterwards, Ein's children reach Violetta for the first time, where a dejected Loon admits he destroyed Cetera, but the greater chaos is the fault of a much worse entity. His daughter Loon joins and we will address her in a moment. Within Violetta, we obtain Ren's arrow parts. Turning to Lion's choices, both have merit. Laia is the inheritor of an ancient enemy's name. Louise is the daughter of the final lion enemy. Both have compelling, mysterious countenances. But let us be honest, Laia is the better choice. Marrying her, as with Marina, is powerful. A son of Arakio and Laia's heir marrying. It is as if all of history culminates here. Laia's lines makes it feel as if she were a woman out of time, but that her sacrifice has all been worth it. It is minimal but effective characterization. They have twins, Fuin and Laya, which is an original concept to this route. The marriage makes them truly feel like inheritors of their forebears' legacy. The younger Laya dreams of falling into a black pit, and a sudden earthquake triggers an investigation by the twins into the world's events, beginning with Loon due to his zoomed-out perspective. Fuin's opening features foreboding elements, though they do feel somewhat lacking in power, as it feels as if they could have done more, such as with using the music to strengthen the atmosphere of a prophetic story. The younger Laya is said to have powers her mother does not, perhaps implying she has power on par with the original Laya, heightening that sense of legacy. As with other routes, we hear of Arachio's twin. Within Pilota, the stakes are raised as we discover the ship is veering towards a black hole, while a mysterious force prevents course correction, somewhat similar to Noin's events. On Violetta, Loon states a ship like yours appeared, but one of the domes targeted and destroyed them, while the earthquake everyone felt was caused by return fire. This creates a mystery about who is escalating events. As with other routes, we recruit Luna, who you'll notice appears different here, and we then obtain the arrow parts. Despite the initial setup being somewhat weak, the results are interesting, as this route excels in its sense of build-up, of many fantasy and sci-fi concepts building anticipation. Marrying Louise. Many do not, since she did not travel with you. It is odd that Dan, who is hardly relevant, joined when it could have been her. Louise also has the weakest exchange. Let's get hitched. Okay. Is that really all that's to be said? At least mention that marriage within the last hostile alliance leader's family would unite people. Lion becomes a king of Violetta, which is strange. For one, Loon is still in power. Wouldn't it have been more politically advantageous to bring her back to Rick? The developers wanted Violetta to be a third-generation starting point, but I merely wish the justification was better written. Lion and Louise's son is Lewin. A ship that looks like ours appears, but one of the domes fires on them. Essentially, the events are the same as Fuin's, but the cause is immediately seen. However, the result is not only less story, but it has none of the dramatic build-up or intrigue that Fuin's route has. It feels bare bones, as it doesn't replace Fuin's escalation with any new story of its own. Lewin's route is thus the shortest with the least narrative. You recruit Luna, who is your protagonist's cousin on this route, and go below to obtain the Siren parts. You learn about the black hole. Lewin must also wake up Laya again, as she returned to sleep after Lion's marriage. This was lazy writing, as we are doing the same thing twice within a single lineage. Interestingly, since you gain the arrow parts early, you may skip going to Grand Directa, meaning you may never hear about Arachio's twin, even though confronting him later is a very important part of the storyline. The routes afterwards are mostly the same. Siren allows for much needed aerial travel. His multiple modes act as a homage to the first game's vehicles, though Ren's forms unfortunately receive considerably less use. Within Foundry, Wise Man explains the ship's history. Again, the world building and payoff reflect the developers' ambitions, between the population being descendants of Palma from previous titles, the mystery of the unholy power, the connections to Phantasy Star II, the story of Ohario and Aina 2,000 years ago, they perhaps being forebears of Ohario and Laya, meaning the generational war stretches deep into history. It all reflects a team that wanted to leave their mark. However, Palma building 400 gigantic ships in such a short time is such a huge source of contention, as the time frame to construct them is absurd. The events also don't perfectly fit in with what occurred in Phantasy Star II. It isn't unresolvable, but neither this game or Phantasy Star IV attempts to do so. The unholy power having destroyed all ships but two is frightening, serving as proper build-up. We then fly to Clanclair, where we find even more sages, who inform you of the need to transform the legendary weapons. The weapons serve a symbolic purpose, as each were divided among Arachio and Laya. but now must be united within one group. The marine parts allow sea travel. The search for Arakio's sword is somewhat absurd since its location was hinted all the way back at the beginning of the game. The accidental freeing of Dark Force builds the Apocalypse. Learning Megiddo in your rage, which you cannot use in combat, is strange. No one wants to be told that they learned something that they cannot use. The Mian Claw is gained from Mian, a wandering cyborg who wished to see her master Arakio one last time. Seeing you holding his sword, she sees it as one final joy before breaking down. An attempt at endgame emotionality. On Sage Isle you find more sages. How many sages does this game need? Siren, full of regret upon learning the truth, dies and surrenders his weapon. I will address that momentarily. The encounters begin reflecting the design stylings of the first game's enemies, not merely homages. The more sinister, disquieting depictions reflect the unholy enemy we are close to confronting, again using the gameplay to assist the story. And you must go all the way back to Clanclair to see the other sages again, to have them transform your weapons into the Nay weapons. The quality of the third generation roots varies. Luna's inclusion is brilliant. Due to varying upbringings, her personality differs. Laya's awakening is powerful, but it is on 3 roots, and on one occasion is awoken twice in the same timeline, which felt really lazy. The story necessitated wielders of Laya's bow and the Loon Slicer, but creative solutions weren't impossible. This plays into the true issue of the third generation, that aside from the introductions and a handful of NPCs, the 4 routes are extremely similar. 3 routes involve the ship redirected into a hazard. 2 use Rick as the starting area. Ain's children's routes are longer, engaging areas Line had entered during the second generation, whereas Ain's children, however, do not enter the areas Ain did. While Ain's children's paths are much longer, so much of it is an agonizing march all over the place for hours, with locations that are so old hat at this point. Even the shared content consists of seemingly endless walking, especially to find the proper temple warp points. And within all of this is sporadically light amounts of story. It's also a little tough to navigate at first. It took a while to understand the warp points work in logical directions. It's quite realistic, but not very fun. Part of my confusion stemmed from the fact that I couldn't believe the game would honestly put you through this. Truly discouraging is the use of Siren and Loon. Ain's story ended with loose ends, so Shin merely finding him after having given up is anticlimactic. Even more so for Noin, since Siren reignited his war. For Lion's children, the Lion Towns are empty, meaning Siren, who you did not meet during the second generation, waged an entire war to the right of the screen, so you simply run across the regretful Siren, but have no real idea who he is. For Ain's children, despite building up Loon's war, you also discovered him by the time he discovered the truth. In fact, many things are repeated for convenience. Cetera Castle is destroyed on all routes, though not everyone has narrative justification for that. There are attempts at emotional moments, but the dialogue is not crafted well enough for that emotional force. The arrow parts in Laya's temple travel are limited. Symbolically, they represent needing the legacy of both Arakio and Laya to overcome. But at this point, I just want to travel faster. Due to length differences, the encounters have been balanced between routes, despite each path having different monetary gains. The combat at this point boils down to just attacking and healing in between battle, with not much complexity or great use of the rose system. Overall, not every factor is considered well enough, and many points of the story could have been fleshed out and dramatized more. Altogether, the limits and time constraints are apparent. I haven't even mentioned the doors to nowhere, caves programmed in that you cannot enter. Evidence that the third generation was to be fleshed out more can be seen in leftover data for a Luna boss fight. One cannot help but wonder what could have been. On a positive note, the overall tying up of narrative threads from the runways and everything else are all tied up rather nicely. The payoff to the runways, Paris, the Lion Temples, and all of the other ruins are great. The answers to the world all made sense. Before we conclude, I would like to give mention to the dungeon design. These second game's ones were gigantic labyrinths, but were hampered by the walking speed and encounter rate. The third game thus settles for more manageable, but still complex zones. The curve is quite nice, beginning with areas with a few long trails that lead towards the exit or dead ends. But eventually, they grow into multifaceted networks of pathways. Unusual for RPGs is how almost all of them are single gigantic rooms, relying on increasingly unique and interesting shapes and forms. The most brazen concept is the first generation's last area. The second to last featured a fountain entrance, but its successor used multiple fountains leading to multiple pathways. Unfortunately, aside from the staircase maze to find Laya's pendant, an idea already done in other RPGs, no other dungeon in the game achieves this level of ambitious originality. Aside from that, I will mention that the broken glass floors matched with the techno backgrounds can be visually difficult to parse at times. With very minimal hints, the players must find the last world. The final dome does not have its own atmosphere, but its lone location, the unholy capital of Lashute, does. Its cracked interior, harrowing music, the nefarious and bizarre encounters, the sense of depth over the waters to grant it an epic feeling, and the NPC's malicious dialogue where they taunt and condescend to you, giving Lashute a palpable, unholy feeling, and a true sense of Dark Force's malevolent nature. The crafted dialogue of their manipulation gives the feeling of truly being among Dark Force's followers. The slow build of his manipulation and war across generations truly finds its fulfillment here. The dialogue about their plans and how it puts your family at fault is frightening. Their plans are somewhat convenient, however. How did they know their contrivances would work as planned? How did they know Kine would summon the moons? What if he just took a boat? Considering their reach, one wonders if they could not have found a way to just release Dark Force themselves decades ago. Upon defeating Arakio's twin brother, Rulakar, who I will discuss in a moment, we proceed. The final dungeon, unfortunately, looks like any other dungeon. Dark Force once again awaits within the proverbial Pandora's box. Phantasy Star's Space Satan's dialogue is perhaps the most well-crafted in the game. His talk of feeding on your suffering is perfectly sinister. You can tell how much joy and rapture he gains from manipulating people. He has a disgustingly good design. The smirking face, hidden evil face, and the many long-tongued laughing faces express a being who takes joy in knowing you are his toys. The fight can be long due to his high HP, his 3-part form, and an attack that deals massive damage to your entire party. But Phantasy Star III allows for infinite buffing. Using law repeatedly on your hero makes it possible to deal over 1000 damage over time, for devastating results. In a spectacular ending, your protagonist destroys Lashute with Megiddo, while Miu uses grants to save the party. Each protagonist has their own ending. Shin's reflects the game's theme of reuniting humans, first between Arakians and Lions, and now with a whole other world. Noines has Pilota reasserting control of the ship in time, with everyone discovering 3 inhabitable planets. Perhaps it is the Algol system, and the total annihilation of Palma was greatly exaggerated. Or perhaps this system having 3 planets means that it shall become a Neo-Algol system. Fuin's ending is one of grandeur. The product of Arakio and Laya is declared High King overall. The phrase Phantasy Star is invoked to describe a golden age, a clever use of the namesake. Luin's is the true surprise, ending up on Earth 10,000 years ago, a reference to Phantasy Star II. Chilling as you know this one day leads to the Earth's corruption. Phantasy Star III, despite its many writing issues, embodies a number of themes that are executed well. Kine's journey of confronting both his own people and opposing society's prejudice and historical inaccuracies works through embodying his point of view. Every future generation continues to heal the rift, finds there are commonalities in both sides, and eventually, you always join the lines of Arakio and Laya together. When considered along with the sci-fi and fantasy rebalancing element, finding harmony can be seen as an important motif of the game. The prejudice of Iraqians and Lions began with an exaggerated and falsely remembered past of the other side. Both Siren and Loon, banished on opposite moons, returned with long-forgotten grudges to resume a long-dead war. And Rulakar is the worst with his nihilism, despairing over his family's deaths in the Laya-Rakio War, causing him to believe that nothing should exist. The theme is one where hurt and damaged people come to a corrupted state of mind, where they feel the only answer is to damage to others. Dark Force, who challenged Palma 2,000 years ago, manipulated Arakio and Laya 1,000 years ago, who led to the current events that are said to echo past ones, and who states your party's descendants will face him, is a reoccurring spiritual enemy as opposed to merely a physical one. Every ending contains ominous undertones, usually mentioning 1,000 years of peace, but that number also being a grim reminder that this will all occur again. This is a reminder that the battle with evil is never-ending and always pervasive. The terrible moments of history are doomed to be repeated, which Dark Force, the pure manifestation of evil, is representative of. In some form or another, all societies at some point will face Dark Force. Phantasy Star III has seen re-releases across countless platforms. The first two titles had received budget remakes, garnering mixed reviews and low sales which prevented one for the third entry. Despite their debatable quality, it is unfortunate that we have never received a remake of any kind. Overall, I love the idea of Phantasy Star III more than the execution. The aspirations for 1990 are incredible, giving way to marriage, multiple story paths and endings, a unique world, grandiose setups and payoffs, and themes of societal conflict. However, like Phantasy Star II, it is a 16-bit game that can feel like an 8-bit one, but more culpable due to higher expectations as a 1990 title. It never quite capitalizes on its grand ideas to maximum effect, attributable to a lack of experience by the staff, technological issues, and perhaps time constraints. If you would like to experience the game, I truly do recommend the retranslation for the best experience. But as it is, Phantasy Star III is such a promising concept that cries out for a fulfilled vision. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and comment for the algorithm lords. My Twitter can be found in the description. If you want to support the channel for as low as $1 a month, you may do so on my Patreon. Thank you for watching, and God bless you all.